Welcome to Moment of Truth with Amy Chen Mills. That's me. Our show today, Sad Francisco. How the tech bros behind J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are attempting a Bay Area and national coup. First, we want to give credit to the podcast Sad Francisco and its host Toshio Marinek, from who we are stealing this episode title. Please subscribe to that podcast to learn more about everything we talk about this evening. With us this evening, we have a Bay Area journalist of many years, also a podcaster who has been tracking the tech bros and venture capital fund executives who live in and around the traditionally left-leaning city of San Francisco. He and his co-host have researched how these tech execs have been putting their particularly heavy thumbs on the scales of democracy in our beautiful Baghdad by the Bay, in other Bay Area cities, and now across the entire nation, as these folks tip the scales for Trump and Vance. But first, a brief news update. Locally, a week-long vigil has begun at California Congressional Representative Jimmy Panetta's Santa Cruz County Building office from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day to protest Panetta's positions on Israel, Palestine, Gaza, acceptance of AIPAC funding, and his most recent congressional vote to disallow Gazan death toll figures from the Gaza Health Ministry, while no other organization is tracking these figures. In other news, residents from the downtown Santa Cruz, California St. George Residences, a 122-unit low-income studio apartment building, are facing sudden huge rent increases of 100 to 300%. The majority of St. George residents are seniors on a fixed income. Many also have physical disabilities or mental challenges. Reporter Max Chun recently wrote an article for Lookout Santa Cruz about this calamity for St. George residents. This is from a summary of this article. The St. George residences along Pacific Avenue in downtown Santa Cruz will see rents rise substantially in 71 of its 122 units due to an expiring 30-year agreement between the city and its owners. Although officials say the situation is unusual, the move comes at a time when homelessness among older adults is rising, and many of the 71 low-income studio apartments are occupied by seniors. According to my contact who lives at the St. George, there are 71 occupied units at the moment. The others are empty and finally being refurbished. Many units, she says, have sat empty for years during a housing crisis that our politicians talk about incessantly. Residents are organizing and could use support. Please show up to a meeting this Thursday, August 15th at 1 p.m. at Calgary Episcopal Church, the Red Church on Center Street, with a goal of organizing for the City Council meeting Tuesday, August 20th. Again, that's an organizing meeting to support the residents of the St. George residence. I used to call it the St. George Hotel, so I'm just going to call it the St. George Hotel Apartments. Show up to a meeting if you would like to support these residents on Thursday, August 15th at 1 p.m. at Calgary Episcopal Church on Center Street. Now, on to tonight's show. With the selection of Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as Trump's VP pick, new levels of scrutiny are upon major Vance supporter Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal and Palantir, and his tech bro network of VC capitalists, many of whom have laser-focused their political designs on and around our beautiful Bay Area, and in particular, San Francisco, traditionally known as a hotbed of LGBTQ plus activism and progressive politics. The Moment of Truth team first started covering political upheavals in San Francisco for Talk of the Bay when we interviewed recalled San Francisco School Board member Allie Collins, who was deposed with two progressive colleagues by a bizarre conglomeration of tech executives, out-of-towners who had just moved to the city, YIMBY or Yes in My Backyard supporters, and back-channel affiliates of the Christo-fascist group Moms for Liberty, which we have also covered extensively on past shows. I will link to these past episodes in our show notes. While claiming a moderate, centrist, or even progressive mantle, these tech bros have made significant inroads in San Francisco politics, including funding the recall of progressive DA Chesa Boudin. Now, many of them are going all in on MAGA, Vance, and Trump. So here's the question. What do these tech bros and bazillionaires want from San Francisco and the nation? Kevin L. Jones is a multimedia journalist and audio producer who's worked at some of the most notable news outlets in the Bay Area, including the San Francisco Chronicle, KQED, and KTVU for 2 decades now. He currently hosts the leftist news show and podcast Doom Loop Dispatch with D. Scott Miller. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey there. Thank you for having me.
You sound loud and clear, so that's a wonderful thing. And then we also have D. Scott Miller, I believe, joining us by phone. Are you there?
Yes, I am. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We didn't have a bio for you, so do you want to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm the former managing editor of the East Bay Express, the Oakland alternative paper. I'm also a former contributing writer for the San Francisco Bay Guardian, San Francisco Weekly, and I'm leaving one out.
Wow.
I'm also a contributing columnist to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And so, yeah, I'm just a writer.
Yeah, not just.
And we should give him credit, too. He did coin the term Afro-surrealism with a very famous essay.
There you go.
Yes, I did.
I mean, hey, alternative media, that's how I came up in this journalism world myself. And in fact, I used to work for Metro, which I believe bought the East Bay Express. Is that right?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And when did they do that? Because I just was talking to an editor there, and I saw on her email that they had like 9 different. I was like, wait a second, the East Bay Express. When did that happen?
That happened during the pandemic. Actually, it happened in 2020.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd love to hear your opinion on that, but we'll save it to see if we have time at the end of the show. Because one of the things we want to cover is how the news media has been covering or not covering what's been happening in San Francisco. And what I'd like to do is lay out the background for our listeners, and I'm hoping the two of you can do that. We've covered this a little bit, as you heard, with, the interview with Allie Collins, which was when I first was like, wait a second, what's going on in San Francisco? This is weird, right? But let me just say to our listeners that let's start from almost the end, which is that J.D. Vance is our vice presidential pick along with Donald Trump on that ticket. And J.D. Vance was supported to the tune of $15 million in his senatorial race in the state of Ohio. That was more money from Peter Thiel than J.D. Vance raised on his own in his own PAC. So you could almost say that Thiel is why Vance became senator, and Thiel is probably also why Vance became the Trump VP. And that's how significant these tech executives that live in and near San Francisco are. So let's go ahead and start with you, Kevin Jones. You've been tracking politics for a long time in San Francisco, and the first thing that I heard about actually was the school board recall, because we're down here in Santa Cruz, which is a little further away. We like to pretend that we're not sometimes a part of the United States at all. We have the
good reason.
We have protection of the mountains, the ocean, and we feel like we're in this little idyllic, paradise. But actually, it's not true. We have a lot of the same issues, which we're going to get into and ask you about. But if you could talk about what you first noticed, and then how, if you want to summarize what you think the situation is.
Well, yeah, it was definitely the school board recalls for sure, because it was out of nowhere. It was during the pandemic, and it was over stuff that was basically acceptable the previous year. That they were waiting for the vaccines, that they're not opening schools. So why don't we work on these other things that are on the agenda, like renaming schools, which is something residents wanted, and former school board member, former, I believe also supervisor Matt Haney pushed for.
Right.
Let's get these names changes,
Right.
But the right jumped on that, especially when they had, it was a Lincoln school and a George Washington school. Oh, what, do you hate America now because you want to change the names? But it was literally just right-wing meat that kind of kicked off all this scrutiny. And then you could see it happening with Siva Raj and Adam Lujan coming in and basically being the face of the school board recall, even though they had basically just enrolled their schools that December.
You mean just enrolled their kids in the schools? They had just come from, I think, Canada or something?
Or no, I think just kind of up the way. I think they were Livermore, if I remember right.
Okay.
But really, literally just nothing to do with the school board. And suddenly, not only are they, getting their kids into school and angry about it because they, of course, like everyone else, are having online classes.
Right.
But they're now the face of the recall. And first thing they do, go on and talk to Glenn Beck. That famous left-wing Bay Area journalist.
Bastion of repute. Yeah.
You also can't leave out Diane Yap.
Yeah. Friends of
Diane
Lowell.
Yap
Yeah.
And Friends of Lowell. And the thing that's interesting about Diane Yap is that she came in connected with the Manhattan Institute.
Yeah.
Which ended up being something that it continues to become a factor in everything we're seeing here. I think Diane Yap in a lot of ways was their kind of like connection into a much larger network of this network state that we're about to talk about. So I just want to tap into that. And if you actually take a look at Diane Yap's Twitter page, it's at Real Diane Yap.
Yeah.
Now all she does is racist, white supremacist stuff on her Twitter page. But at the time, everybody kind of accepted her as like a normal, not weird, not racist person.
Right.
I just want to add that.
just a Chinese parent, as a Chinese person myself, she's like the bane of my existence. But what I heard from Allie Collins and Diane Yap with Friends of Lowell, basically like president of that organization. And for people who don't know San Francisco, which is a lot of our listeners, just to keep that in mind, that's a school in San Francisco that's part of the public school system funded by taxpayers but was merit-based in terms of getting in, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so a lot of parents who had their kids there did not want what the school board was proposing to make it just sort of more equitable getting into Lowell School.
A lottery system instead of testing.
Yeah. And we have that here actually for our school that's sort of like that. And it's still, it's a good school and it's also just based on a lottery, frankly. Mm-hmm. So it's not such a radical idea. And then I also heard Allie Collins say that the mailing address for the Friends of Lowell, this sort of like, we're just concerned parents, wanting to make sure our kids go to a good school, whatever. The mailing address was the same mailing address as Moms for Liberty.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
Absolutely. That's true.
Exactly. And it's all kind of coordinated by these bigger networks and stuff. Emily Mills, who everyone should follow on X, a.k.a. Twitter, SF Mills, she points out all this stuff all the time. It does, you feel like it does delve into the conspiratorial, but she's got the receipts and she's showing how all these people are kind of working together with like the Napa Institute the Manhattan Institute. All these institutes are kind of working together. And we should also...
Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we should point out, too, another aspect of this going on at the same time. Well, you have this kind of low backlash because it was made very much about race. The whole reason for switching to the lottery system is because the school just was not diverse. It was not, you could see it. It was like, in terms of Latino and black students, much lower in comparison to Asian and white students.
Yeah.
But they made that be like, like that's going to bring the school down, which is obviously a racist statement. But at that same time, so they're pushing that. At that same time, you had the Boudin recall. So San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin had just came in. Now he was the child of former... definitely bigger than activists. You could almost say, well, they were weathermen. Let's just say that they were weathermen. Yeah. If you know anything about the history of the weathermen, and he was very much about. Less incarceration, holding bad cops accountable, and not pursuing drug charges and trying to decrease the amount of people being incarcerated. But that's another thing that especially the local police unions didn't like. So there was almost this kind of coalition that started that was actually really tapping into the Chinese demographic in San Francisco, because while Boudin was in office, there was a death where basically a guy was speeding through an intersection and hit a senior Chinese woman and killed her. And it was made like, well, why was he out? Oh, Boudin let him out. Oh, that's, it's because he doesn't keep Asian people safe. And so, you have this whole kind of growing angry demographic that they tapped into that really pushed through the recalls.
Yeah.
There's a lot that, because at that same time too, with not only the backlash against the Lowell change, you also had these accounts popping up like the Asian Crime Report, and I'm trying to remember the name of the campaign, but it was very much about kind of making it like, oh, these people don't care about our Asian residents and are letting them get killed and beat up and everything, getting attacked on the streets.
Yeah.
But then when you scratch the surface and you see the kind of things they shared, they're also very anti-black and very racist, just like Diane Yap.
Right. I mean, it sort of felt like sort of all these outside influences started to come in, along with the more conservative, libertarian, sort of far-right tech money. We need to take a short break. You're listening to KSQD 90.7, 89.7, and 89.5 FM in the Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay Area, Prunedale, and the Central Coast. Welcome back to Moment of Truth with Amy Chen Mills. We are talking to two journalists, amazing journalists, award-winning journalists, both from the mainstream media in San Francisco and around the Bay Area, and also the alternative news media, Kevin Jones and D. Scott Miller, who've been covering the weird shift in the winds in San Francisco and also now affecting Oakland, where some of these same sort of billionaire folks are trying to, I was just listening to your last podcast on Oakland and trying to recall now the mayor of Oakland, who is the first Hmong mayor, I think, in the United States, practically. And also the DA, who is a black woman. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's also the first black woman DA of Oakland, California.
Right. And so they're also trying to do this during a special election, y'all were saying. And so this seems to be a tactic, is to come in and I guess, and use special elections where there's very low turnout. People are conservative, generally speaking. It's more conservative people who come out and far fewer people who come out to special elections. These cost a lot of money. And so there's this whole kind of campaign. And as you guys are saying, Manhattan Institute is involved. People behind Moms for Liberty are somehow connected to people in San Francisco. And then also these tech executives. And I want you guys to talk, if it's okay, about Gary Tan and Balaji Srinivasan. I hope I'm saying that right. That's how I say it. I've heard different versions. And the network state. So, Kevin, let's start with you, and then we'll go to D. Scott.
Yeah, well, basically the network state is first a book by Balaji Srinivasan.
And he's a tech venture capitalist, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what his big payoff was. But he was a partner with Andreessen Horowitz, one of those big investment firms.
Yeah, both of whom are funding Trump, I believe, and supporting Trump Vance.
These are the guys like Peter Thiel who think democracy impedes their rights. It's that kind of thing where they feel, well, I want to do this. You can't stop me, and you shouldn't stop me. And a big part of it is, so they basically kind of want to create an elitist society for themselves. Gil Duran has done a lot of amazing reporting on this. I highly recommend reading up on his article, especially there's one in the New Republic called The Tech Barons Seeking to Purge San Francisco of Blues. And that's a big part of it too, is that a lot of this new techie money that came in, and remember, They all came in very recently. They are all kind of rushed in after the Twitter tax break from San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee. Basically, once this kind of open ticket, they open the gates to come on in and because we want your money and we don't care like who's already here. And so a lot of these guys came in and they just started having their way, throwing money at stuff. Citizen United, it's legacy in full force.
Yeah.
And a big part of it is they want to cut out left and progressive politicians, activists, everyone. Anyone that they see as not holding to their center, because they call themselves moderates is the craziest part.
I know, and sometimes they call themselves Democrats, or,
yes.
or centrists or something, and they're allied with YIMBY. I want to talk about that too, but go ahead.
Yes, and it is kind of crazy seeing the people that they're running on the Democratic ticket, like one guy, Trevor Chandler, who claims to be a substitute teacher and lifelong Democrat, but it turns out he was voting for Republicans as far back as definitely he helped on McCain's campaign. And I don't think he voted for Trump, though. I think that was his last thing. But he was also for a long time an AIPAC lobbyist. So that should tell you everything. But anyways, going back to the network stake, they want to set up a separate thing where they basically cut out anyone that's on too much on the left of them. And that's basically, if you have a heart, you might be too much on the left for these guys. And they literally, they talk about like Balaji has on his podcast is like fawned over this beautiful idea of a world where basically the grays, as they call them, he separates everyone into three colors: blues, grays, and reds. Reds on the right, blues on the left. The grays are the techie elites. But basically, and he pitches a world like in some place in San Francisco where basically the cops and the grays and the reds basically pick on the blues and push the blues out of all regular life. He's very clear about it. Like, he wants to have parades showing off military might and celebrating tech and business and that kind of stuff. Not, gay pride, nothing like that.
Tech pride.
Tech pride. Fascist pride. Let's be real about it, It's very scary stuff. People talk about Project 2025 being scary, which it is. It's going to be
scary, yeah.
A taking away of people's rights. But that's exactly what the network state wants to do. If you care about the poor, the hungry, the homeless, these are the people that are pushing for the homeless sweeps. They want the homeless. They want Mayor Breed to basically have no quorum, no caring at all for the people that truly just can't afford to live in the city. They have jobs in the city, but they just can't afford a home, so they're living in a tent. They found that out. They want to push this idea that all homeless are drug users, can't get their life together. No. 90% have full-time jobs. It's just that the rent
in San Francisco?
In San Francisco.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot. Ours is like, I think 30% have full-time jobs down here.
Yeah. It's the majority of them because it's just so expensive. You have to pay $3,000 for a one-bedroom.
Yeah, and that probably includes couch surfing. Okay, so I want to just pause for a moment and say that Nyanko Nyasu, who's on our Moment of Truth team, said that he thinks Balaji got this idea from a Star Trek episode, where I don't know if you guys ever saw this. And so people think Balaji is crazy, right? Like I've talked to people in our community and people who are in the media and so forth. They're like, oh, but who cares? Because Balaji is, he's nuts and no one really pays attention. So I'm going to go to D. Scott for a moment. D. Scott Miller, also a reporter in the Bay Area. Can you tell? Peter Thiel is a huge player in our national politics now, and I don't think. Between him and Gary Tan, it seems like they have a lot of shared philosophy. Is that true?
I actually approach it differently because I used to write for Gawker.
For which one? Sorry.
Gawker. I used to write
okay.
for Gawker.com. And the first time I ever heard Peter Thiel's name is he was the guy that took down Gawker. He took my job away from me, basically, over a weird ass Hulk Hogan comment that was made. This had to be in, like, I guess the mid 2015, right? It was actually, I think, before Trump. So the first time I ever encountered this guy, it was this thing where there was a manipulation taking place, and it was about taking down alternative media, right? And it was about taking down legacy media. And now Gary Tan and the network state, along with Balaji, they have this concept of parallel media.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they use as an example of parallel media is Twitter, right? In fact, Gary Tan actually, there's a video circulating where Gary Tan points to Twitter as the parallel media to all the so-called legacy medias. And so when Elon Musk took over Twitter and turned it into a right-wing platform, right? He turned it into like an 8chan or a 4chan, which is essentially what it is. And he became so emboldened that now he just goes along with white supremacist, fascist, like, memes and ideologies, and he doesn't have any problems like openly embracing them now.
Yeah, anti-trans. Right? Yeah, definitely anti-trans.
Anti-trans, anti-black, anti-woman.
Dog whistles. Right? I've seen some real blatant dog whistles from Elon Musk. Yeah.
And so when Gary Tan says that the parallel media is this fascist network, right, that can easily be manipulated, as we're seeing Elon Musk do. He's easily manipulating this. He said he's not going to get rid of it. He said he's going to get rid of all the bots, when in fact he just redirected the bots toward his ideology.
Right.
And so when I start looking at what the network state actually is, a perfect example, Chris Larson, millionaire VC guy, when he gave money to London Breed to support an increased police presence in San Francisco, he highlighted George Floyd. He said that the police reforms that happened after the George Floyd incident, and after Chauvin was actually like found guilty, which is so rare for a police officer, he said he wanted to reverse that, and that was one of the reasons why he gave her money. Okay, another parallel media thing that happened was Pirate Wires. And Pirate Wires, I just learned this week. Pirate Wires actually was founded as a result of the George Floyd protests.
Wait, Power Wires?
Oh,
Pirate Wires.
Okay, yeah, it's a little. The phone is a little bit fuzzy, but yeah, okay, Pirate Wires.
I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can. My computer didn't work, so I'm sorry.
I know, no, it's fine. It's not your fault. Just keep on going.
Pirate Wires is another example that Balaji uses as an example of parallel media. And what they've done is they have actually, and like I said, this was founded because the person who founded Pirate Wires actually had a response to the George Floyd protests. So a lot of this is tied into the rise of the resistance, in particular the black resistance and black and brown resistance that's taking place to their machinations. Right. Yeah. So Pirate Wires right now, as we speak, are on an assault mission against our black and brown council members, Carol Fife, and also a lot of our activists who are also black and brown women, including what's her name? I really wish I could.
Cat Brooks.
Not Cat Brooks. The woman who's running for Congress.
Javanka Beckles.
Not Javanka Beckles, the other one. Okay, her name will come to me. She's a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like they're actually targeting black and brown women who are in positions of power.
Yeah. Okay, so hold on. So the Pirate Wires and this other outlet were actually reactionary media outlets after the protests after George Floyd was killed, correct?
Well, after Derek Chauvin was jailed.
Right. Oh, okay. Then that's when people got really upset. Okay.
Yeah.
So Balaji has a thing where he actually wants to use the police force as military might. So that means he's working towards the same immunity that Trump is working toward.
Right. So they're aligned in that way. Mm-hmm. Hey, you know what? We're gonna have to take a quick break because of the FCC and our underwriters need their time. I'm so thankful we have 2 new underwriters for this show. You're listening to Moment of Truth with Amy Chen Mills on KSQD 89.5, 89.7, 90.7 FM throughout the whole Monterey Bay Area and California Central Coast.
KSQD thanks GPI Builders for supporting this program. GPI Builders is a locally owned and operated full-service construction company with more than 10 years of experience and expertise. GPI Builders specializes in home additions, ADUs, and residential remodels throughout the Bay Area. For more information, 1-800-916-8343 or gpibuilders.com. Thank you, GPI Builders, for supporting community radio, K-Squid.
I am childless, I have cats. I am the biggest nightmare of this J.D. Vance. I am a lady who loves her pets. They are good for taking care of all the rats. I am woman, this is cat. We are an item and together we are brats. Get out your notebook, we have a quote. In November we are all going to vote. Childless cat lady, I am running the whole country. Childless cat lady, meow meow. Watch out JD, childless cat lady. We are running the whole country. Childless cat lady, you better watch your back JD.
That was Alina Bach from her TikTok video with the song I'm assuming is called Childless Cat Lady, and that refers to what's now become a very famous sentence by J.D. Vance that the country is run by childless cat ladies like AOC and Kamala Harris. And there's this certain, I mean, as a woman, what I feel a lot from these sort of tech bros, and I've gotten comments on my own TikTok account about this from others, is they quote unquote hate women. Like now it's interesting. Teal is gay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Teal has a gay partner or husband. Mm-hmm. And I think that the thing about the, what was the name of that media outlet that you were talking
Gawker.
about?
That's why.
Yeah, that's why he tried to take down Gawker. Go ahead.
Because they outed him. And that is, I mean, honestly, that is something controversial. Like, and I mean, if he is donating to anti-gay causes, there is some justification there, but it truly should be up to the person if they want to be out or not, or at least that's how I feel. But that led to not only him, taking down Gawker and basically setting up a plan, a strategy for other people to take down news publications. This is exactly what Musk is doing right now with Media Matters. He's suing them and basically dragging out the suit just to suck away all the money he can from Media Matters because he didn't like their coverage.
Yeah.
And on that same note too, going back to kind of this separate, which Scott summed up so well about their separate publications, the separate news cycle. I mean, it's very 1984, Well, we make the news. And a big part of that kind of started back during the pandemic and the lockdown and those first recalls when Jason Calacanis, who is one of the people on the All In podcast with David Sachs, a San Francisco conservative who literally hosted a DeSantis fundraiser at his house.
Mm-hmm. And I think he was on that launch of DeSantis with on Twitter with Elon Musk, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And he also just spoke at the RNC.
Right.
And basically was laughed at. He was pretty embarrassing. But then, or at least no one, it was like talking through the entire thing. But so now Calacanis, who's also another successful techie, he paid this journalist, Susan Dyer Reynolds, to basically write a hit piece on Boudin. And was very open about it, throwing down this money, like $70,000 or something to that effect, to just to write a hit piece. And that's exactly what she did. It was a very, it was definitely kind of more anecdotal than anything. It was like one more case where basically probably shouldn't have let the guy out, but Boudin did for whatever reason. But that set them up. That kind of kicked it off. And then from there, they're kind of setting up their own parallel media. And so now you have people like Michael Moritz, who just started the SF Standard. Now, at least they're kind of writing. They're trying to be in the center, but they definitely have their opinion pieces that are very skewed. And then on top of that, too, there's a new one that Susan Dyer Reynolds writes for called The Voices of San Francisco. Okay. But the thing is, too, what's so funny is they've already captured the legacy media in the area.
Hang on one second. Before we go to legacy media, I just want to note that Peter Thiel is one of the founders of seasteading, which we talked about on a past show. And so when we say that Balaji, for example, is crazy, well, actually Peter Thiel, who has a huge influence on our politics, as we've said, has proposed, these ideas of we need to start our own countries, outside of the realm of the countries that are governed by our current governments and run by and funded by our tax dollars. And they've actually tried to go for things like the Solano Project, California Forever, right? To create sort of these company towns. I mean, it gets very weird,
Yes.
And this is what I almost feel like, and the legacy media, when you bring up legacy media, it's like somehow I think that the legacy media, and I am going to include our own city here, Santa Cruz, California, has a hard time grappling with or grokking the weirdness of some people and how much power they have. Because it's like, if I report on this, I will look crazy, right? And so let's go to D. Scott. D. Scott, do you have any thoughts about that? And besides, I just want to throw it, I'm sorry, but it's important to me that Thiel has talked about democracy being antithetical to freedom. And
right. There's a lot of things that are going on here that are actually international.
Yeah.
Right now, what's happening with the network state is they're trying to do the very same thing in parts of Africa, in parts of South America. We're also seeing the influence seeping into Argentina with Milio, and also people pushing back in the UK, people pushing back in Paris, because this thing has been an organized right-wing takeover of the entire planet. This is not just localized.
So
right?
When you say network state, can you explain that? I mean, I explained a little bit about Peter Thiel, but that's a Balaji public, that's online, right? The network state. It's
that's the thing that's so insane about it. That's the reason why it's so hard to explain, right? Because what you can do is the only way you can really explain it is in retrospect, right? After the attempt is done, then you get it. If you look at what happened in 2016 in the UK, as simultaneously taking place in Brazil, simultaneously taking place here, and all of these things are connected to either Trump or Le Pen or
Bannon.
Boris Johnson. Yeah, but the thing is, this is happening all over the planet simultaneously. There was an attempted right-wing takeover of the entire world in 2016. They tried it in Germany. They tried it in Paris. They tried it in America. They tried it in South America. They tried it in they actually did try to take over everything. And so it's not until we actually can be able to make the connection between, say, okay, perfect example. There used to be a time when there used to be these black guys who used to always play, old black men, who used to play chess over on Post 1 in downtown San Francisco. Powell Street.
Yeah. And
they had a whole bunch of tables set up there just to play chess.
Yeah, I remember.
Right? And in a lot of ways, they used to keep the peace there. The guys wouldn't cut up in front of the old men, right? They'd have to go someplace else. And so in a lot of ways, it kept the peace. But it made the newly transplanted tech bros extremely uncomfortable. And so London Breed got rid of them.
Wow.
Right? And so, but in doing so, it showed their power. It showed how much power they had to transform the culture of the city. Right? And so this is what they're doing in Oakland right now, but it's really hard to get your head around until you look at it backwards. How did Boris Johnson do that? Right?
Yeah.
How did Le Pen do that? How did Trump do that? Then we start looking at Russian influence, and you come off starting looking crazy. But the truth is, if you actually look backwards for it instead of trying to predict it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I really love about Kevin's work is that he doesn't try to predict it. What he's showing the pattern.
Right. Well, right. And then you look back at Cambridge Analytica, you can read the Mueller report and you'll find that the Russians were influencing social media, particularly targeting black communities, trying to, and all this is really happening. And even some leftists. Really happening.
I mean, you don't have to be a predictive person to actually talk about things that are actually documented as fact.
Right. Yeah, it's not a conspiracy. I mean, they're literally just pointing out that the boxer, was she Hungarian? The one that everyone accused of being a man, actually.
Right.
I mean, they're now saying that's
directly from Russia.
Yeah.
And the same thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks in almost entirely Russian talking points.
Yeah.
Almost entirely. And so what we're looking at is when we look at the network state, when we look at somebody like David Sachs, right, and we look at somebody like Peter Thiel, what we're talking about is what they're openly saying and doing. The same thing's true with Project 2025. This is not a conspiracy because they actually published a 900-plus document that we all read. And so it is this thing about, it is about being able to see things in hindsight. And then being able to at least try to figure out ways to cut them off at the pass, because it's not like they're not trying to show us what they intend to do. And so, I mean, to me, what the network state actually represents is, well, I just saw recently a video Peter Thiel said is actually the failing of liberalism, right? He said the liberalism is failing. Right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
But what is liberalism? Liberalism is equal rights for women, equal rights for the marginalized. Mm-hmm. It's a human rights issue.
And he's also said that the women's suffrage, the women's right to vote, is an obstacle to true libertarianism. And he's walked that back to say, well, I don't mean to take away anyone's. Of course, he's going to say, I don't mean to take away anyone's right to vote.
Of course.
Right, but then you have Republicans who are saying that they want to take away the women's right. You have Christian nationalists saying that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how Project 2025 falls into the purview. Like Emily Mills just recently shared, they're going to have a conference. Jerry Tan's going to be there. Peter Thiel has actually helped pay for it. Chris Larson has helped pay for it. Sachs has helped pay for it. And they have speakers there who are going to be from Project 2025.
Is this the Reboot conference?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. We've been following from Santa Cruz. We might be the only people down here following so closely. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but to me though, I mean, the thing that's actually at the core of it is it's like you appeal to a certain kind of racial animus and gender animus, and they really do believe that the American people are more like them than they are like us.
Right. Yeah,
right.
It definitely feels so exclusive.
They appeal to misogyny, they appeal to homophobia, they appeal to transphobia, they appeal to anti-blackness, they appeal to the anti-immigration. They appeal to these things. I personally believe they believe any of that. I think what they're doing is looking for is power, right?
And money.
Because Balaji, he doesn't break things down into black and white. And I'm going to step back and then I'll let Kevin speak more. But the other thing is that we have to also talk about the white ethno-state.
Okay.
And what comprises the white ethno-state? It's not just white people, okay? It's Aryans, okay? It's Aryan. And what is an Aryan? Aryan can also be a South Asian person, right?
Oh.
And one of the things that we're seeing right now with J.D. Vance's choice of his wife is that American white nationalism does not understand the Aryan nation globally. Right? So what we're seeing a lot of people who don't understand why J.D. Vance's wife is South Asian, right? And they're calling her a brown. And they're saying he's...
Right, now let's be clear. These are MAGA folks and white supremacists within the MAGA movement who are upset that J.D. Vance's wife is South Indian and South brown.
Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my thing is that what I'm seeing happening in that particular context is that the Bay Area has already lost the thread as far as the network state is concerned. Balaji is not welcome into their crowd. Jerry Tan will not be welcome to their crowd. Diane Yap, only through extreme hatred, is welcome into their crowd. Right? So I think
into whose crowd? Into the Aryan Nation crowd? Or I'm confused.
White supremacists.
Okay.
White supremacists.
Oh, Gary Tan is not allowed because Gary Tan is Asian.
Yes.
And Balaji is Indian.
Yes.
Got it. Oh, I see. So there's going to be some conflicts here.
Constant conflict. Because the thing is, your understanding of the Aryan Nation is this Google-oriented Aryan Nation. It's this San Francisco-oriented Aryan Nation.
Oh.
And you think you can embrace all these things that are actually coming from Project 2025, and then you can use that to bring people into your thing. But to me, what I'm seeing is that they just totally underestimated the white supremacy that is American white supremacy.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe that thing worked with Chessa. Maybe that thing worked. As it turns out, Diane Yap was an anti-black person, and she helped with the recall, got rid of Allie Collins. But when you start talking about places like Oakland, we are the most diverse metropolitan city in the country, right? So it's going to be really hard to convince everybody to grab onto, I'm black and now I'm anti-Asian, or I'm white and now I'm anti-black,
right?
Or I'm middle class and now I'm anti-poor, or I'm housed and now I'm anti-homeless.
Yeah.
But that might work in other places, but I don't think it's really going to extend very far. But I do believe that's what the intent is. I think the intent is to like divide and conquer. Yeah. In order to have the American government legitimize crypto so they can make tons of money. Yeah. I think that's really what it's all about.
Okay, I gotta stop because I've got to give out ID numbers for KSQD. You're listening to KSQD 90.7, 89.7, 89.5 FM in the central coast of California and the Monterey Bay. We're speaking with two reporters who go back a long way in the San Francisco Bay Area who've been tracking the rise of the tech bro billionaires and vulture capitalists who have now really weighed in on San Francisco politics to the point of recalling a district attorney and recalling 3 school board members. Here's the thing. So people think it sounds crazy. I remember I listened to an NPR story about Allie Collins and the school board members who were recalled, and I thought, oh well, that makes sense. I mean, what were they doing working on changing names when we're in this, pandemic and so forth? And that was sort of how NPR reported it, right? Yep. So let's talk about the media a little bit, but I also want to say that I had to talk to Allie to figure out. Wait a second, she has her side of the story, and we are not hearing it. Yeah. We are not hearing how it was actually the former school board who decided to change the names of the schools. And it wasn't, this was right after the George Floyd killings. People were supposed to be doing stuff, and so anyway, let's talk about the media. I want to talk about also our particular city because we have a very strong YIMBY movement, right? And what comes, I would say that in general, in the establishment and our establishment media here, the idea of YIMBY seems very reasonable. It's like, okay, yes, and we do have a housing crisis. We have people who can't live here. But of course, there are many ways to solve a housing crisis. If we had rent control, right, then I don't think this, you heard me talk about this apartment complex that is like one of the lowest income, stable, downtown, pedestrian, walkable, friendly complexes we have. These people are going to get kicked out of their homes now. Some of them have been living there for decades, They really rely, and then they're going out into a community where the housing prices are now, it's for a studio apartment, $3,000, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is even though some of these ideas sound crazy, Emily Mills and you all have been tracking the funding, the Phoenix Papers, which you did a whole podcast about, are people who actually went into the dark money funding of these campaigns. And so I feel like the news media isn't doing a good enough job of saying who's funding and what do they want, So could you speak about that and also and the YIMBY, how is YIMBY being used in the situation?
Well, so, the people behind YIMBY, let's just be clear, it's AstroTurf. They put on a great, as I call it, faux-gressive, FAUX-gressive, face on it because it's all about density, will stop climate change, going more transit oriented. That's going to be climate, that'll help decrease emissions and stuff.
Right. And housing the unhoused, supposedly.
And housing the unhoused. But the YIMBY movement started 2015. And actually, at the time when it was first getting coverage from Toshio from San Francisco, when he was covering for outlets like In These Times and Truth Out, there was 61,000 empty units in San Francisco. There was really not a housing crisis. What there was a rent level crisis. And it had already pushed out basically the majority of artists in San Francisco. The people that made San Francisco cool.
Yeah.
The people that actually came up with Burning Man and stuff like that. The artists, they're all gone. They're all pushed out because of high rents and stuff. And all right, that would make sense. If you build more, hopefully prices will come down. But we have not seen that. You can go through San Francisco and see over and over again brand new apartment buildings with half, maybe a third of those units filled.
Wow.
And if you go on the website and you look at it, They're all $3,000 for a one-bedroom, $2,500 for a studio. So, of course, people can't afford that.
Right.
But it's actually good business for these landlords to keep them empty because they can just hold out and wait for somebody who can rent it.
And now they have these algorithms at this RealPage company.
Yes,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, but I was just going to say, but because, though, too, what's at the core of this is that real estate is an amazing business. It's actually pretty much our biggest business.
Right.
They found in 2021, $217 trillion are in business globally. But still, in America alone, real estate, foreign investment in real estate is $54 billion. So these are massive, not necessarily industries, but investment worlds. And so much of it, too, is everyone caring about their properties, which is why you see like an increased push for police. Because what are police really? The protectors of property, they're the ones after the George Floyd riots, people are like, oh, I hope this stops, police brutality. But on the other end, you go, look what they did to our buildings.
Right. Well, so I want to tell you, when people from YIMBY, we have YIMBY Action, YIMBY Law, and the person who's the policy director for both of those lives here, served on the homelessness committee with me. And when I hear people talk, it's like they really seem sincere, we want to build housing for people. It's a housing crisis. I guess where I get suspicious is when you have people like Nolan Gray at California YIMBY writing for the Manhattan Institute all the time. And Manhattan Institute signed on to the Grants Pass decision to criminalize the unhoused. So it's like strange bedfellows. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to make one note, too. A great example of kind of this YIMBY hypocrisy. It just happened in Berkeley. Now, Berkeley, they are going to push through an upzoning ordinance that will basically create more missing middle, as they call it. So not your big skyscrapers and not single-family homes, but your smaller apartments with like 3 to 4 units,
Right.
And so they want to build it over. So, hey, not too much resistance to it, except for one spot, the hills. Now, if you know anything about the Berkeley Hills, it has been it's like kindling. It's basically just a wildfire waiting to happen.
Right.
You talk to any wildfire expert and they will tell you it's not about if, it's when a wildfire is going to rip through, just like what it did in Oakland in 1981. Same kind of thing. And the problem is that they haven't been upkeeping the roads or anything like that. So it's these tiny roads. So fire trucks have issues getting out. And there's a lot of houses out there. I remember that's actually back in the late 90s, early aughts. That was the real estate boom in Berkeley.
Yeah.
So they have this ordinance and they say, okay, we are going to open up this, to missing middle housing all throughout except the hills. And the YIMBYs hated it. The YIMBYs were angry and they ignored. They didn't care that the fire chief literally wrote a 17-page report talking about how the making dense living in the hills would make it extremely more dangerous and probably increase the amount of deaths that would happen. Does not matter. What matters is upzoning, the removal of zoning regulations. People should be able to build wherever because it's not actually about housing. It's about product.
Yeah. I did want to mention all the media outlets that have sprung up, or even the Twitter accounts like Emily Mills, not related to me. But go ahead. And I just want to make sure we have time. We've got 5 minutes left.
I just want to say very quickly, the one thing that, that's never discussed is subsidized housing.
Yeah.
Yep. They're against it. That and rent control. They're against it.
So to me, I think the thing that's really most important is that, we have this guy, Chris Moore. He's a part of our Oakland recall. He ran for city council. He lost he had 4% of the vote. And he just recently agreed to a tweet that said that what the main goal is to keep black and brown people from renting in places that are predominantly white.
Wow.
He actually went along with that. He agreed. This guy named Steve Heimoff.
Okay.
Okay, well, anyway, but yes, subsidized housing.
Okay, well,
and how it's coated as black and brown. It's a really big deal.
We need another hour with you all for sure, and we'll have to have you back on another time. I did want to mention Emily Mills. She was just called out by Marina Times as like being insane. She should be in an insane asylum for doing the research and the reporting that she is doing on her own without pay, from what I understand.
And do you know who Marina Times is? The previously mentioned Susan Dyer Reynolds.
Was she mentioned on the show? Because now I'm okay. Okay, so this is not a news outlet. I don't know what it is. The Marina Times, and then also, so Mission Local seems like a good outlet. You've got 48 Hills, which is Tim Redmond of the Bay Guardian, and your podcast, which is
great guy.
Yeah, and your podcast again, which is called
Doom Loop Dispatch,
and Sad Francisco, which was the title for the show. And I did also want to mention, because I think we left it out, that J.D. Vance worked for Peter Thiel. That's how that connection happened. J.D. Vance came here and worked for Peter Thiel in the Bay Area, and that's how they got connected. And it's interesting to me because I don't think Thiel likes Trump. And so I wonder, if that's already creating. Go ahead,
Thiel was the one who actually arranged the meeting for Vance to meet Trump.
Yeah. And
it also was the guy that funded him to get a whole series of jobs in the tech industry.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly what that connection is. But Thiel is actually the main benefactor of J.D. Vance throughout his entire career.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to have to close. You guys, I wish we had more time, and we will have to get you back on. Maybe we'll do a special episode to pre-record or something. Thank you so much, Kevin Jones and D. Scott Miller of the Doom Loop. Yes, thank you. Of the Doom Loop Dispatch podcast. You can find that and some of the other. We'll link everything to our show notes. And please contact the Moment of Truth team at amy@ksqd.org with questions or comments about our program or to suggest a show. Find our podcast, please, and review, subscribe, and comment at Apple iTunes and at YouTube and at Spotify now. And check out our social media at Amy Chen Mills on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Medium. Amy's coaching and education website is at www.amychen.com. Moment of Truth gives many thanks to our team, Nyanko Nyasu, sound and tech engineer, and our research and production team, Nyanko, Mei-Ling Obinata, Joy Schendeldecker, Todd Zimmerman, and Vara Ramakrishnan. Todd Zimmerman of Nativerse Studios created the theme song. Kathy Krizik created our logo. Thanks to our KSQD program manager, Howard Feldstein, and the entire KSQD team on the California Central Coast, where this show originates. Thank you for tuning in to Moment of Truth. And remember, if we don't use our democracy, we lose our democracy.